Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic, host of the Rush Hour podcast, with a Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni update. There's actually a lot to discuss here, so I'm going to try to break this down. But I am going to share a thread that I found on Twitter that does a really good job of explaining how the CIA guy that was hired by Blake Lively might be operating his crisis PR. And by that, I mean the divide and conquer that we're seeing play out with trying to pin Justin Baldoni supporters to a specific political ideology. We have firsthand information of that, as now I've been clumped in with a sort of article about those on the right, politically speaking, that are covering the story. As you guys know, that's not my ideology. And it's frankly exhausting to see it all play out live because we knew this was going to happen. So we're going to discuss this all right now. Another aspect of silencing the conversation is going to be to take away the monetary reasons people would cover this case, specifically ad revenue. Now, in my video from yesterday, Blake Lively slammed for using mental health issues as excuse for protective order. It is demonetized. That's what this yellow button means. It means that they are saying this video is receiving little to no ad revenue due to content identified as not suitable for most advertisers. Again, I don't know what that is. I was reading court documents and whatnot, but there's an interesting thing at play that happens here. And I'm not saying this as like a woe is me thing. This is just what happens. When I covered the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case, you could not say their names out loud. You could not say them in a thumbnail, a title, or even out of your mouth without getting immediately demonetized. There are certain words that if someone manually puts them into the system, you can't say. That's why when we talk about certain issues, we'll say DV or SA or RA, we'll just spell it out, because when you say them out loud, sometimes the monetization tools will strike it down. But also, it happens manually. Somebody can literally go into YouTube, I don't know who it is, but they can say, here are the words that are immediate, and again, this happened during COVID, where you couldn't even say COVID or COVID-19. You couldn't say that without getting immediately demonetized, which was a huge criticism because there was a lot of good information being shared about that, but you could not even get the information out. So we know that happens. Someone can literally type in Blake Lively, or they can type in Justin Baldoni, and if YouTube decides to go this route, they can make it so that all those videos just get demonetized. I don't think they're gonna do that, but we saw it play out with Amber Heard. We saw it play out, and it really will stop content creators from wanting to make the content, because, hey, I got to show up and do work too, right? We got bills to pay. So either way, it's interesting. I'm going to share, earlier today in the Morning Rush Hour podcast, I started to talk about the article that my thumbnails were stolen and used for. And again, I've had no response from the journalist yet. So we'll get to that in a second. But here's the spiritual shift on Twitter, posting a very interesting thread. Shocking. Justin Baldoni supporters silenced and attacked as Blake Lively hires CIA alum crisis PR. Blake Lively's new PR team and her powerful dragon friends appear to be working overtime to attack and silence Justin Baldoni's supporters amidst their ongoing legal battle. Is this a strategic move to control the narrative? Blake's PR machine has officially gone full damage control by hiring the CIA alum crisis manager. So either way, they provide all the receipts of hiring the crisis manager. Step one. Divide and conquer strategy. The government and CIA have long perfected the art of division, keeping people fighting amongst themselves instead of holding real power accountable. This exact tactic appears to be at play now. Instead of discussing Blake's questionable actions, Justin supporters are being divided, labeled, and attacked. See Blake's director Paul Feig's wife's text calling Justin supporters women-hating Trumpers. And again, we're going to see this play out. I'm going to have a separate video that covers the right-wing media's obsession with Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni legal dispute. I assure you out there, I am not a member of the right wing or the conservative party. I do not judge my audience who is. I don't judge people if they want small government or whatever the Republican Party, values. I would judge people that are, part of movements that are stripping away rights and deporting people with green cards and things like that. But that's a separate issue. We'll get into another date and time, this afternoon rush. So we've got receipts coming in that the ecosystem of left-leaning media will be used as a vehicle to shame others. I say that carefully because I don't believe all left-wing media does this, although I do believe there is a minority of left-leaning organizations that still operates on this very archaic model, which is like us versus them. You must be all on this side or all on that side, which is just not the case. So I'll get into my receipts of that in a second. Manufactured fan support. As the spiritual shift continues, they share manufactured fan support. Notice how Lori Feig, wife of big-time director Paul Feig, conveniently stepped in as one of Blake's fans while paparazzi captured Blake interacting with the crowd. So Blake was nervous to show up. Obviously she was. She knew there'd be people there. Maybe she didn't want someone to throw paint on her. There's, PETA, when PETA shows up, they throw paint or flour on you. There's always something. Was someone going to, throw do some sort of civil disobedience or throw a pie of whipped cream at her? I don't know. I wouldn't do that. I don't recommend that. I don't recommend any sort of physical violence or anything like that, but you can understand why she would be afraid of that, having a very publicized event. So what they do is they have pre-planned people in there. But again, it is very manufactured. So it's like, oh, Blake's got all these fans, and it's like several people. They've all been identified. They're in the inner circle. The media hit job, smearing Justin Baldoni supporters as right-wing. Shortly after Paul Feig's wife, Lori, made her controversial comments labeling Justin supporters as women-hating Trumpers, a coordinated media attack followed. Prominent content creators and public figures supporting Justin, many of whom simply stand by him, were suddenly labeled as promoting a right-wing political agenda by controversial journalist Taylor Lorenz and other Blake supporters. I'll get into Taylor Lorenz in a second, but yeah, this coverage continued. They've been targeting content creators. Very, very common stuff you see. Silencing and censorship. Blake Lively's and Ryan Reynolds' PR team and supporters can't win on facts, so their new strategy seems to be silencing, shaming, and attacking. Big and small. Taylor Lorenz, Caroline, and other Blake supporters are leading the charge. Caroline Kwan, a prominent leftist Twitch streamer, never heard of her, falsely accused me and other female content creators of using the Justin versus Blake case to push a radical right-wing agenda. The question I have is this coordinated by certain people like Taylor Lorenz? Are they in on it, or are they useful idiots? Is it easy to get them to cover this because it fits into their ideology? I honestly don't have an answer for you. Number 6, even regular supporters are being suspended. They're not just attacking pro-Justin Baldoni content creators, they're going after regular people online who support Justin Baldoni too. That's right, this account was accused of being a bot, even though they're not, and they were suspended. Now, my channel, like others, is probably too big to be suspended unless they get me on some crazy thing, which nothing I've done. But, you can see the intimidation tactics that are being used to say be careful how you cover this. Justin supporters come from all political and non-political backgrounds. The media's attempt to force a political label on them isn't an organic debate. It's a manipulation tactic. The Me Too and Believe All Women narratives are being selectively weaponized, not to seek justice, but to destroy an opponent while ignoring contradictions. The real goal isn't truth or accountability. It's control. Silencing, censoring, and smearing Justin supporters allows Blake supporters to dictate the narrative without scrutiny. This isn't about politics. It's about media manipulation and narrative control. So ask yourself, why are Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, their PR team, and supporters working so hard to silence Justin Baldoni supporters? If Blake and Ryan had the truth on their side, why not let the facts and evidence speak for themselves? And again, just to correct, for me, it's not believe all women, it's believe women. And I say that because a lot of times the people that have tried to attack the idea of believe women will say, well, we should believe all women. And you go, no, clearly not everyone should be believed, but believe women means believe somebody and then do your research and then come to your conclusion. But on initial account, I like to believe people. I like to believe women. I like to believe men. And I don't think most people have an agenda for lying. Now, people will say, no, people lie all the time. Sure. Yes. But I live in a world that's friendly, and it's done very well for me. And you can be very friendly, expect the best out of people, but that doesn't mean you're weak. So if someone tries to abuse that, you say, no, I believe women, but the evidence doesn't seem to be on your side, so I don't believe you. I believe women, I just don't believe you. And that's fine too. And you can do that. And we don't need to be shamed for it. And that's okay. And I just reject the shame. I just reject it. So here's Taylor Lorenz. I mean, she's really fallen in a dark place. She was writing for Washington Post, New York Times, and now she's writing for Mehdi Hassan's, I guess, new blog page that he has, Zedio. So here she is sharing her blog, which we're going to get to. She features me, though, in it, a photo of me. And I responded, hey, Taylor, a friendly progressive here. I saw my YouTube art was used in a piece about right-wing commentators covering Blake versus Justin. How could you give my thumbnail credit and or also specify that I am not a conservative YouTuber? Cheers. And of course she didn't do that. She just lumped me into her agenda, having, I guess, no idea what my political ideations are, although it wouldn't be too hard to find out. Now, what's interesting, when I say I'm a progressive, I remind people of this because a lot of people like to hear left versus right. Oh my gosh, you're on the other side. You're a Democrat. You're a leftist. I use progressive because I think progressivism actually rises above the, I think it rises above the two-dimensional view of left versus right. Right? You have left, right, Democrat, Republican, center, and it's just this flat, very basic line. I think progressives actually exist above that line three-dimensionally, and I think there's more conservatives and Republicans that actually would align with progressives than people give credit for. I say this because I have a lot of close family that went from supporting Bernie Sanders to supporting Donald Trump. Donald Trump I would elevate too above just a flat two-dimensional line and say he's a populist, even though I think he's a fake populist because I think he doesn't care about the American people, but he claims to be a populist. That's my opinion. And when I see that there's a lot of people that want to exist in a world where there is free speech, where we don't get put into political identities, where we can take money out of politics and fight for the middle class and all these things. And I think more people than not agree with that. And there are different scenarios that are used to silence or divide us. We see it played out politically, where we don't even have conversations about universal health care, like real conversations, even though the majority of people would want that. We don't have those conversations. They just want to keep us fighting about trans people's bathrooms because that can keep us on a ideological left versus right. I see this play out briefly, and I'm going to cover this briefly before I go back to it, but I see this play out right in the media. And the vitriol is insane. So there was an article that I covered yesterday that there was Sarah McBride was misgendered. She's a trans woman. She was called Mr. McBride by one of her someone in Congress. And it started a huge fight because someone else in Congress defended her saying, have you no decency? We're not talking about trans women in sports. We're not talking about underage trans debates about gender issues or hormone issues or that. We're talking about if someone says this is the pronoun they would like to be called by, that you do that. We're not compelling you to do it. We're not saying it's going to be illegal if you don't call someone by the right pronoun. It's just basic human decency. That's all it is. The greater debate about sports and this and track stars and swimmers and that's not the debate. So Megyn Kelly got blasted in her comment section for taking the cultural war debate. And I blast people like Megyn Kelly because she went from moderating a presidential debate, right? Where she was moderating a presidential debate with Donald Trump and she was right in the center of it, to falling to the classless level of culture war issues. Megyn Kelly says, you haven't been treated poorly. You've been called Mr., which is accurate, and then told to use the men's bathroom because you are a man. We need not participate in your delusion. Standing up for truth is honorable, and that's what your GOP colleagues are doing. So this is a side issue, but I'm sharing a cultural issue where we're not, like I said, we're talking about someone who's identifies as a woman, has been that way and ran for office as a woman and was elected by her constituents as a woman, and she's doing nothing to talk about trans politics. She was literally there for, because she's in Congress, and people refuse to call her by her preferred pronoun. It's just mind-blowing. I don't think there should be a law that forces people to do that. I think it's about human decency. So my response to Megyn was, have you no dignity, Megyn? For F's sake. And a lot of the comments under Megyn's go, Megyn, you're going too far with this. You're going too far. Like, have the conversation about sports or youth. Have those conversations. But when an adult decides to do something with their body, you leave them alone. You leave them alone. And I think Megyn Kelly's living in a form of delusion that she's sucked into these culture war issues. I say all of that because if you talk culture war issues, you talk about it with this Justin Baldoni case. And it goes both ways. The world is more of a horseshoe than a two-dimensional world, politically speaking, where you've got people on the very far left in a horseshoe that are actually close to people on the very far right in a horseshoe. That's why they call it the horseshoe model. And people like Taylor Lorenz can't seem to see nuance that exists outside of that very restricted thinking. So what Taylor Lorenz argues in her piece here is that the right is hijacking this story to lure people to their side, to weaponize it, to break down the Me Too movement. No offense to the Me Too movement and no offense to Taylor Lorenz. We are surgically covering this case and not making it a bigger issue than it is. Maybe Blake Lively lied about being harassed, and maybe she's attaching herself to a Me Too movement bandwagon, but literally nobody else is. Nobody is making this about a Me Too issue. So share a few pieces. Kelly is just one of a roster of conservative influencers dominating the Lively versus Baldoni coverage. Right-wing creators, including Candace Owens, have been at the forefront of the case, while mainstream liberal creators follow in their footsteps, often laundering right-wing talking points to their progressive audiences. Conservative influencers are not just covering the Lively versus Baldoni story more frequently than everyone else, they're covering it faster, in more detail, and providing the most compelling, up-to-the-minute storylines. I highly disagree with this. It's so cherry-picked to look at Megyn Kelly and Candace Owens and think that they're doing something that we're not. I'm covering things as up-to-date as Candace Owens is. We're all getting our information from the same Reddit threads and people sending us things. A lot of people are like, no, Candace is discovering all of this. Trust me, we're all getting CC'd by the same sources that are looking into it, and we're just kind of deciding as we go through our sources what's worth covering, what seems valid, and what's not. And that's what a journalist does. Here's what Candace Owens said. She's quoted, "It has brought in a new audience and changed my demographics." And by the way, if Candace Owens is introduced to a new audience of possibly left-leaning people, maybe it'll help Candace Owens get rid of her audience capture and not feel like she has to speak just to right-leaning people. Maybe that'll help. You know what I mean? So you could look at it from the angle of, well, all discussion is good discussion if you ask me. Owens has relentlessly live-streamed herself discussing the case. So you can tell from Taylor Lorenz's verbiage here, relentlessly live-streamed herself. Taylor, Candace Owens is doing her job. That's what she does. That's what she exists as a content creator and as a new media journalist. Posting about it on Instagram and X. She created an entire YouTube playlist on her channel documenting her coverage. By the way, it takes less than 1 second to create a YouTube playlist. When you upload a video, you click the playlist so people know what you're talking about, because not everyone cares about Candace Owens' discussion about the French presidents, whatever. So it goes on and on. The writer Gary Baum at The Hollywood Reporter noted in January, for those on the right, Justin Baldoni represents that most sympathetic of figures in contemporary American life, the canceled man. Meanwhile, Lively is a liberal who has received public publicity for repeatedly donating to left-coded indigenous causes. Well, that's because Blake Lively's Cherokee, right? Facetious. Most importantly, conservatives have recognized that the case, much like Johnny Depp's crusade against Amber Heard, can be weaponized to dismantle support for the Me Too movement. I mean, look how careful she is with her words. Can be weaponized. So just because something could be weaponized, we're not supposed to cover it? So when I was being sued for covering the Clayton Echard case, the bachelor who was falsely accused of being pregnant with someone's twins, and we exposed all the evidence. When I was being sued, people said, oh, don't go on so-and-so's channel. They're conservative. I got told that about Megan Fox. I got told that when Clayton went on Charlie Kirk. I got told that when I tried to get my coverage on Megyn Kelly. Yeah, I tried to get on Megyn Kelly. You know why? Because I was being threatened with a $120 million lawsuit. And when you're being threatened with a lawsuit, all you want is for the truth to come out. So I don't speak to Megyn Kelly. I don't speak to Candace Owens. I speak to their audiences, and I speak with reason, and they appreciate that. So for everyone like Taylor Lorenz, who's worried that Candace Owens is going to capture this audience and mind F them into oblivion, that is so juvenile to think the audiences don't have more agency than that. I will find, and by the way, this criticism of certain left-leaning ideologies is it's so evident because check this out. So Joe Rogan is spoken about here. When the Democrats lost against Trump last fall, mainstream liberals all over the internet claimed that the party needed to do some major soul searching. For a brief moment, they seemed to realize that their political movement was completely out of step with the culture. They held countless panels, forums, and strategy sessions that emphasized the urgent quest for Democrats to identify or cultivate their versions of the left's Joe Rogan. So this whole idea by certain left-leaning media, mainly mainstream media, saying, we need to find the left's Joe Rogan. Hey, idiot. Joe Rogan was on the left. Maybe he was libertarian, but he supported Bernie Sanders. He supported the idea of universal basic income. He had Andrew Yang on. Bernie Sanders on. You guys had him and you gave him up. No, not the collective you like everybody, but CNN when they reported on Joe Rogan getting sick. Did you know that they actually changed the color of Joe Rogan's selfie to make him look more green and gangly? Did you know they actually made him look more sickly than he was? They lost Joe Rogan because they pushed him away. And again, I say they, but these are the people with the megaphones that did this. Now, I don't get pushed away. Now that I've been included in this article right here, and I've been included in the worst way possible because they used my thumbnail but didn't actually source me. So I by the way, as far as I'm concerned, Taylor Lorenz, this is plagiarism because you're not citing you sourced this visual artwork here and you're using it to fit your agenda. It's not just plagiarism; it's theft. To be quite honest, it is theft. You got this from my YouTube channel. You know my effing name. Put it in your mouth. And then type it down and put it underneath that thumbnail. Now, I don't really care. No one's going to Zetio.com to see this, but it is interesting to see this play out live. It's like, oh my gosh, we know this is already happening, but now I'm involved in the story that's trying to be used to be divisive. So do me a solid to my audience. Double check, confirm you're subscribed to my channel. Because rather than go to Taylor Lorenz to blast her, I'd rather elevate us and everything that we preach. Just because somebody like Taylor Lorenz, who is on the left, does this, doesn't mean I'm running to the right. I am firmly dug down in my principles of what I think is good for our country, which is taxing the ultra wealthy, getting billionaires out of the office, fighting for the American people, unions, decent livable wages, healthcare, maternity leave, things I know we can all afford, not cutting people's Social Security and Medicaid. I know we can all afford these things, and I know that there's a path to do that for the people, but our government is run by big lobbyist insurance groups that have a lot of power, and they want to keep us starving while they dangle the carrot in front of our head. We need a full system overhaul. I believe in all that, and no amount of Taylor Lorenz's is going to push me away from my core beliefs, and no amount of Taylor Lorenz's is going to stop me from believing what I believe or put me in a box to further her agenda. My agenda, the agenda I speak of right here specifically for this case, is Blake versus Justin getting down to the truth. If any information comes out from her side that changes my opinion, you guys will be the first to know that. But as was posted here by that nice Twitter thread, rather than get that evidence out, we're doing very clear tactics to divide and conquer. It doesn't work in 2025. We're done with that. We're done with these tactics, and we're here to speak the truth. That's all we're going to do. So I'm going to cover this other right-wing article. This is actually a soundbite that Taylor Lorenz spoke in. This has to be a separate video because it's going to be long. We're going to have to pause and interject, and we're going to have to continue to share a point. But that's the world we love, of unlimited bandwidth here on YouTube, whether I'm monetized or not. If you want to subscribe to the Patreon, that can help offset the cost of not getting your videos monetized, patreon.com/Dave Neal, or you can just, join the Facebook group or whatever. We appreciate everyone who's stuck around and understands that regardless of your political ideology, we will not accept the narrative that some are trying to paint us into. All right, more content coming your way. This ex-CIA guy, maybe they're getting their money's worth. Is it working? We'll have more on that in our next afternoon rush coming next.